here in the office at the Always Believe House, and today we're going to learn how to continue to solve for literal equations. Remember, your formulas on your star formula charts are basically literal equations, and we're solving for those variables in this lesson. Let me start recording. So let's go. Okay, we're on page 5 in your notes. Page 5 in your notes. Page 5 in your notes. Sorry about the delay. Page 5 in your notes. We did page 2, 3, and 4 yesterday. We did pages 2 and 3. You should have done the homework on page 4. And today we're going to continue on the literal equations. So an equation involving 2 or more variables is called a literal equation. These were basically the formulas you had on your star formula chart since the 3rd grade. Formulas are an example of literal equations. Let's write down the perimeter of a rectangle. P equals 2L plus 2W. Okay, the area would be little bh, right? Base times height. Area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. Those are literal equations, which you know as formulas. When you rewrite literal equations, you may have to divide coefficients, combine variables or variable expressions, and put and right here. So we're going to multiply and divide coefficients, and we're going to add or subtract variables or variable expressions in this, okay? Now then, here's some bit of news right here, okay? This is kind of important to get. These are not in your notes. Write down solve for n. We're going to do this in the middle. So we're going to solve all these for n, okay? So let's write down P plus n equals G. P plus n equals G. Remember Friday or yesterday I taught you to circle the letter you're solving for. And in P plus n equals G, we got to move the P to the right, don't we? So when we do this, we're going to subtract P. So when you add or subtract, this happens all the time. N equals G minus P. Notice, what was P equal to on the left? It was positive, right? When we move it to the right, it's going to go from a positive to a negative. So when you add or subtract variables or variable expressions, the sign will change. So let's write that down. When you add or subtract variables, the sign will change. Okay, the sign will change when it's moved across the equal sign. Just write down the sign will change. When you move that variable across the equal sign by adding or subtracting, the sign will change. If it's negative on the left and you move it to the right, it's going to be a positive. Please remember that. Now then, let's go to this. Write down solve. We're going to be solving for n, so write down P times n, or Pn equals G. And we want to solve this for n. Notice here we're not adding or subtracting, we're multiplying, and the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So on this problem here, we're going to divide both sides, but we're going to solve for n, so circle the n, and we're going to divide both sides by the p, aren't we? So n will equal to G over P. Notice what happened to the P. It went from the top of the fraction to the bottom of the fraction. So when you multiply or divide, the term or the variable will move to the top to the bottom or the bottom to the top. It will switch places in the fraction. Let's go to this one. Solve for n. Remember, we're going to keep solving for n. So let's write down n over P. N over P equals G, and let's circle the n. We want to get the n all by itself, don't we? Notice that on this one, the P is on the bottom. To get rid of a fraction, you use the Bluebell truck. The P's cross out, they divide out to 1, and you get n equals PG. Notice the P was on the bottom. When you move it to the right, it goes to the top. So the rule on that is, when you multiply or divide, the variable moves across the fraction bar. If there's no fraction there, it's going to go to the bottom. So when you multiply or divide terms across an equal sign, it'll go from the numerator to the denominator, or from the denominator to the numerator. That's basically all you're doing in this. So you're adding or subtracting terms across the equal sign, and then you're multiplying or dividing those terms. Let's have some fun. Oh. This is just like eating an Oreo cookie. Mr. Toops loves Oreos. Okay, really quickly. On this one right here, this is the standard form. Write down standard. Standard form. We're going to get into this later. When we start doing linear systems, you're going to write equations in standard form. This would graph a line that in junior high, 8th and 7th grade, you always did y equal mx plus b, which is slope-intercept. If we solve this for y, we're going to switch this to slope-intercept, and you did this in junior high. So let's circle the y. Notice we have the 10x and the 5, don't we? You add or subtract first, then you multiply or divide. So we're going to add or subtract the 10x across, and then we're going to divide the 5. So let's move the 10x across. Notice it's going to go from a positive 10x to a negative. And let's put the 10x in the middle. So we have 5y equals negative 10x plus 80. Now then we're going to divide by 5, aren't we? So we're going to draw 3 fraction bars. And notice the 5 goes from the top to the bottom. So we would have y equals, and we're going to do sign, number, letter 2 times. So a negative divided by positive is a negative. 10 divided by 5 is 2, and our letter is x. Sign, number, letter. 6th grade integer work. You got this. And then if you can't do 80 divided by 5, punch it in the calculator, you would get 16. Notice this should look familiar. The slope's negative 2 and the y-intercept's 16. So on this problem here, our answer goes from standard form to slope-intercept form. You will do this over and over in this classroom before Christmas. So get used to solving an equation for y. Let's go to practice 1. Just like eating an Oreo cookie. Okay, we're going to solve this for m. So circle the letter you want to solve for. Now the 5n is added or subtracted and the 2's multiplied. So we're going to move the 5n first, and then we're going to divide by 2. So let's move the 5n to the right. We're going to add 5n. And we'll get 4, or let's do 5n plus 4. Put the letter first. 5n plus 4 equals 2m. Notice that the negative 5m, or 5n, turned into a positive when we moved it across, didn't we? That will happen every single time. The sign switches when you add or subtract across the fraction, or across the equal sign. Now then we're going to divide by 2, aren't we? And we're going to divide by 2 3 times. And 5 over 2 won't simplify, will it? So 5 over 2n plus 4 divided by 2 is 2 equals m. This would be the answer. Oh, that's like a double stuffed Oreo cookie. It is so good. Mr. Toops loves Oreos. Okay, let's go to the next one. Isn't this fun? Okay, on this one, we're going to solve for x. I wish y'all could be in my classroom. This is a lot funner if you're in my classroom. Hopefully you will be there before Christmas. We're going to solve this for x. Let's circle an x. Now then, we're just going to move over the r, and then we're going to divide by the p, aren't we? We have to add or subtract the r across, and then we're going to divide by the p. So whenever you move that r across, the positive r will turn into a negative r, right? So we're going to subtract r. We'll get negative t minus r equals px. And then we'll divide both sides by p. Notice on this one, we're going to draw 1 fraction bar on the left. So we'll get negative t minus r over p equals x. And notice the p went from the numerator to the denominator, didn't it? If you don't have a fraction, that letter will go into the denominator when you divide it across. And these answers look freaky. You're not used to getting answers like this. So until you get used, and this will take a lot of practice to get used to them. The homework you have today is going to be like multiple choice, so you can kind of see this. Remember, when you add or subtract, the sign switches. When you multiply or divide, you move the term across the fraction bar. Let's go to practice 2. Okay, we're going to solve this for y. So circle your y's. So we're going to subtract the v across and then divide by b, aren't we? That v's got to get moved first because you add or subtract first, then you move the b. So we're going to move the v, so yb equals the minus v, is going to go from a negative to a positive to a negative in it. So the positive v turns into a negative v. Now we're going to divide by p, aren't we? And we're going to draw one fraction bar on the right. So y is going to end up equaling x minus v over p. And notice the p went from the numerator, or that's actually a b in it. Jiminy crickets. So make these b's. Y'all are like, Mr. Toops, what are you writing down? Okay, so we're going to, the v went from a positive to a negative, and the b went from the numerator into the denominator, didn't it? That's all you got to do on the homework worksheet. The answers are there. Just remember, when you move the things across, these things happen. It should start clicking, okay? You'll get the hang of it. We're going to keep this simple. Let's go to example 3. We're going to solve for x, so circle the x. Notice on this we have a fraction. Remember, when we solve equations, you get rid of the fraction first, and you bluebell truck the denominator, don't you? So in our problem here, we have b, don't we? Okay, so we're going to multiply both sides by b. We're going to bluebell truck the denominator, just like you did when you solved a fraction. If you were doing it the way I taught you when you did equations, this is going to be a lot simpler. Notice the b is going to go from the denominator into the numerator. So we have ab equals x plus 5. Notice the fraction went away because the 5 went into the numerator, didn't it? Now then, to get the x by itself, we got to move that 5, don't we? So ab minus 5 equals x. The 5 is going to switch signs in it. That right here is the answer. ab minus 5 equals x. This will start getting easier, I promise. Let's go to the next example. We're going to solve this for n. So circle the n. So we got to move. There's 3 things on this one. We got to move the 2, the 4, and the 5. So get rid of the fraction first. Notice that the 2 will go from the denominator into the numerator, won't it? If you have a fraction, you bluebell truck it, right? Since there's one fraction bar on the right, we only use one bluebell truck. So we're going to eliminate the 2's on the right. We'll get 2m equals 4 plus 5n. Now then, you get rid of the add and subtract first, then the multiply or divide. So we're going to move the 4 over, and when we do that, it's going to go from a positive to a negative in it. So subtract the 4, you'll get 2m minus 4 equals 5n, and then we're going to divide by 5, aren't we? So n, or 2m minus 4 over 5 equals n. That's like a mega stuffed Oreo. Got that Oreo with all the cream filling. The white stuff in the middle of an Oreo is like the most delicious thing in the world. Okay, now then we're going to do some word problems. It's very similar to what you see on the star, just it's going to be simple. Okay, this one is going to be tricky because you're going to do something you haven't ever done before. So write C equals 2 pi r, and we want to solve this equation for r. Since we're only multiplying, to get rid of multiplying you divide, we're going to divide both sides by 2 pi. So r will end up equaling the circumference divided by 2 pi. Now then, it says the circumference is 44 and it wants to know the radius. So we're going to replace the circumference with 44. And notice we could do 44 divided by 2, can't we? This will turn into 22 over pi. And in high school, you will not calculate 3.14 for pi. You just leave pi in the answer. So this is what your answer will look like on the star. You'll do this a lot in geometry. In geometry, you will not replace pi with 3.14. You just leave it in the equation. So your radius is going to be 22 over pi. Okay, on the next one, write down d equals rt. And we want to solve this for, find the time when you travel a distance. So we're going to solve this for t. So to solve this for t, we're going to divide both sides by r. So distance over rate equals time. Notice our distance is 24 meters and our rate is 6 meters per hour. So the time is going to equal to 24 miles or meters over 6 meters per hour. And If you divide that out, you get 4 hours. The meters would cancel. Wow, that is like eating 2 Oreo cookies. Oh. Number 5. We are rocking and rolling. Remember, you can replay this video and rewatch it so you can get this. Hopefully you are enjoying this. Okay, like, if that's fun, right? Oh, so let's write down the problem here. Surface area equals the perimeter times the height plus 2 times the area of the bases. And we want to solve this for h. Okay, the first thing you're going to do is add and subtract. We're going to add and subtract that 2b across and then divide by p, aren't we? So the 2b will turn into a negative and the p will go from the numerator into the denominator. So we're going to have a fraction of this, aren't we? This should kind of start clicking. So we're going to take the 2b and move it across. So we're going to get s minus 2b equals ph, and then we're going to divide by p, aren't we? And notice the p went from the numerator into the denominator. So the surface area minus 2 times the area of the bases, e divided by the perimeter equals the height. I hope you've enjoyed this, okay, as much as humanly possible. Okay, remember, you are wonderful. You are awesome. Always to remember to always believe. Let me stop recording here. Yes, and you are awesome.